Hey everybody, this is Taylor yet again with another Photoshop tutorial. Now we are moving forward and we're going to walk through kind of a step-by-step demo on how we can take our finished product here with a clipping mask, removing the background and allowing for uh, our construct, our photograph of our construct, to have a transparent background. Again, if you look at that checkerboard grid behind the construct here, that is indicating transparency, that we can see through the construct and have a transparent background. We are going to learn in this tutorial how to take this image and bring it into context, bring it into a background layer or a base layer so that we could end up with something that looks like this, perhaps. So introducing our construct with that transparent background into some site context, into a background layer, and then adding a few people. We could add some trees if we wanted to, add some people. Entourage is what this is called, to kind of bring our image to life. And so you may have a background base layer already in mind. Your instructor may have given you some background layers to work with, or you might be out and placing this into another context and have photographs of context that you want to place your model into. And so we will walk through a generic step-by-step on how to achieve this end in mind. Very good. Sweet. The first thing we want to do here is we left off with a video with our clipping mask on, which is great, and that back layer of hot pink still showing. So what I want to do first is I want to turn off the visibility. Click on the little eye icon, turn off the visibility of that pink background so that we see the transparent checkerboard pattern behind that. Good job. You did a great job clipping out your construct. You did a good job setting up your photograph to fit into a background image. Well done. We're now moving on. Turn off that back layer so that we see the transparent checkerboard background, and we're going to save this Photoshop file. I want to save it. You've noticed as we pull down these different menus here, if there are ever shortcut keys, you can see that Photoshop places those shortcut keys here for your reference. You'll start to learn those the more familiar you get with these programs. Control save saves our work. So with the pink layer off, or with that colored layer off, we're going to save this file. Pay attention to what you name that file and how you've done that. So mine is construct photo cropped mask with pink back. Just something descriptive so that I know what I'm working with. Yours may vary. So now that that is saved, perfect. I have a background base layer that I'm going to work this into. But if you do not have a background base layer and you need to create one, how do we do that? There is a short tutorial that I've recorded to show you how to create a new document. If you want to walk through this fairly quickly, I'm going to do that now just to show you. We can go to File, File, New. We are bringing up that dialog box now that allows us to pick a new document. In many cases here in this tutorial, I've been using 11 by 17. Take a look at this. There's a custom one that I have, 11 by 17, but notice the DPI, or the PPI, excuse me, the pixels per inch, it's only 72. That's fine and all for if I was viewing this on the web, but I want to print this off and look at this. So again, start up here, not necessarily what these initial defaults are. Start up here, let's click on print. I'm going to go back to that tabloid at 300 PPI. I'm going to move that over into landscape. 17 wide, 11 high, inches, 300 pixels per inch. Perfect. It's showing me right now that the background color will be white. You also have some options there to turn that transparent if you would like. We can do that. I'll do that here, transparent, and then let's kick this thing off. Great. Now I have a 17-inch wide by 11-inch tall. That's a tabloid size sheet of paper. That is 11 by 17 in landscape format. Perfect. I have my rulers shown here, right? And I like to have those rulers shown as I'm working in Photoshop, just for good reference, but also to be able to pull some guidelines and create some margins of white space around my image. I can kind of set up my image. Again, thinking about the end in mind can even apply to how you set up your document. Now, if you need to have the rulers be shown, view, click on rulers, and your rulers will be shown. From the rulers, I can bring in some guidelines. Watch what I mean when I say this here. I'm going to start with my cursor in the ruler space. In the ruler space, I'm going to left click and drag with left click down. You'll see a very slight line that is showing up in the background. Watch what happens when I let go of this. Can you see that? It's a little hard on the transparent background there. Let me fill that background with the white. I should have just left it white for you guys. All right, we have that background white. Can you see that cyan colored guideline show up there? Interesting. How can I use this to my advantage? If I hover over that cyan line and click and hold and start to drag up or down with the left click still compressed there, you can notice that on that y-axis, you can see some measurements there, 1.050 inches from this space, 0 inches, and I can move down. I can create some margins here. If I hold shift at the same time that I'm holding down my left click, I can lock in on some precise measurements here. So here you can see 0.5 inches, a half-inch margin. I'm going to set mine to 3/4 of an inch. That would be 0.75 inches, and let go. And now I know I have a 3/4 of an inch margin right there. Let me grab another one. So click from the ruler, drag into that space. If I hold down shift, I can lock in on some whole numbers. And so what would give me a 3/4 of an inch margin on the lower side of my image? Aha, it's an 11 by 17, so 10.25 inches. Correct. I just drag that down. I have a 3/4 of an inch margin on that side. The same can apply from the side here. So I can click into the ruler, drag out, hold shift to lock in. This one's easy because it's starting at the 0 inches, 0.75 inches, 3/4 of an inch. Let go of my click, and there it is. Same one here. One more click in the ruler, hold, drag, hold down shift, and now I can lock in. It's an 11 by 17, so over here, what am I looking for? 16. There we go. Sweet. I'm just setting up an artboard here, setting up a canvas to be able to put in an image. Wonderful. Now I have a frame of reference that allows me to get some margin here. All right, I want to place a background image in here. Maybe it's a photograph that I've taken. Maybe it's a photograph or a base layer that my instructor has given me. Regardless, how do I bring that image into the space? You're correct if you're thinking File, and then Place Embedded. File, Place Embedded. It's going to bring up your dialog boxes that show you where you have saved your files. And in this case, I'm going to work with this Bracken photo on the east side there. So I'm going to give that a double click, and it's going to populate into my space here. I can click enter, and there it is. This photograph has entered in as a smart object. I'm not going to get into smart objects here too much, except for that a smart object is denoted by this little icon in the layers here. Basically what that means is if you leave your objects as a smart object, when you make transformations or edits, the original document is still intact. The original file that you've brought in has not been altered, even though it might look like you've altered it in this space. Again, more detail than we need to get into on this one here. So with that, I'm going to right-click that layer, and I'm just going to convert that to layers. And then that smart object icon goes away. I want to kind of reposition this. I don't like that the bracket is up and above my guideline here for white space, for margin. And so I'm going to move my image down lower so that I can see more of the top of bracket into this interior space. The top icon over here is your move tool. You can see how Photoshop does a really nice job. If you just hover over some of these icons, it's going to show you what you can do with those. And so the move tool is what we'll be using. I have that clicked, and you can take a look at my cursor and what the move tool cursor looks like. With the layer selected, I can take and click, left click and hold, and I can start to move this image around. If I wanted to bring my image further down so I can see more of the top of bracken, I can do that like so. If I turn this layer off here, we can see where we are approximately within those margins. And this image looks like it needs to get a little bit bigger here if I wanted to fill up that full space in between the margins. So if I'm happy with that position, or maybe I want to just pull it up there, that could work. And so again, just clicking down my cursor, and with the move tool selected, I can maneuver this around. The guidelines are nice because that allows me to, and intuitively, Photoshop is snapping to those guidelines anywhere I move close to those. And so that's quite nice. So I've lined the top of my photograph up with the guideline there, and with the margin on the right-hand side. It looks like I still have some space on this side that I want to fill up. And so let me control minus to give me a little bit more space to work with. I'm now going to scale this image so that the photograph fits over into this area here. Edit, transform, scale. Edit, transform, scale. And now see I have some grips that I can grab onto around this photograph. I'm going to grab the lower grip here. You could grab any of these over on the side here to make this bigger. But again, I want to pull this photograph over to this guideline here. And when I do that, hold down left click and start to move, you can see that the image is growing. Remember we talked about with raster images with pixels, the more we distort, or the more that we manipulate those pixels, the greater the chance for pixelation. And so I'm going to Control Z just to undo and go back to that original position. With this side wanting to be filled up, I'm not too concerned. To be able to get that over to that side, I'm actually going to grab this lower corner grip. You can see now that when I grab here, the image scales in a different way than when I grabbed from the side. When I grabbed from the side, notice how it grew at the top and the bottom. I want to lock it so that it's locked up to this guideline and to this guideline. So if I grab this grip, it does exactly that. I can bring it to the guideline. You can see there, and I've brought it to the guideline. And again, Photoshop is intuiting what I want to do, and it's snapped to that edge. There we go. Click Enter to end the transform. I can hold down Control plus plus if I want to move into the space, or I can hold Control 0 to get the full extent of my canvas. Wonderful. Now I need to, since I have the transparent or white space behind this image on the sides here, I want to get rid of it down in the bottom here. I can do that with some selection tools. And in this case, I'll use my marquee selection tool, the rectangular marquee tool, clicking that. Again, because these guidelines are here, Photoshop will intuit where I want to do here. I'm going to click close to the intersection of that guideline, hold and drag a selection box that then snaps to this lower right-hand corner. On this layer, I've just, if you can tell, you can see that I have a selection around my image, around at those guidelines. Select the inverse to be able to now select the space between the edge of my photo and the edge of my canvas, and I can simply click delete. It is gone. Okay, so again, that operation, we've scaled this image. I'm now going to select so that this lower portion goes away. I'll be using my marquee tool. I can select around the intersection of the upper left guidelines and down to the lower left guidelines, and you can see, you can look at the measurements are very, very precise. You can see the width and the height of this selection area. When I let go, it's the photograph that has been selected. When I go to select inverse, it's the outside of the photograph, the inverse, right? The other side. Now that's now being selected. And so it's these pixels that I'm wanting to remove. And in this case, I can remove them with the delete button. Delete, not backspace, the delete button. Now they're removed. I can deselect. And I have a nice background image for my construct. Joy. All right. Let's bring in another image. We brought in and placed embedded this image. We are now going to bring in another image. And guess what we can do? We can bring in our saved Photoshop file of our cleaned up construct image. That's right. So as long as we save that with the pink background off, let me go back to, oh, where am I? This untitled document. I haven't saved this yet. We need to save that. It's untitled still, which means I didn't save it. So now that we have this background image that we created at 11 by 17, I can go to File because I want to bring in my construct. Go to File. I'm going to place embedded, and I'm going to select my construct photo, Photoshop file. Double click that, watch what happens. Boom. Wonderful. Click enter. We just brought in a new layer. And look how wonderful and beautiful that looks. It places it to the full 11 inches tall. It kind of fills that space. That layer came in. You can see the layers that are starting to populate here. I have the base layer off. That was all white. So I have the visibility off on that, but we have a series of 3 simple layers so far. The background layer, which I just showed you how to get into that space. And now we've just, again, File, Place Embedded. We selected our Photoshop file that we saved with our nice new clipped and transparent background. We place that file, and here it is. Click enter, and we've got that file in here. Wonderful. So, is that where we're placing this? Maybe not. Maybe we can manipulate this a little bit, manipulate this layer to get it to fit maybe closer to the back of that Bracken East wall there. So what can we do? Well, if you're thinking, well, let's scale it and move it. Did we just do that with our background photo? Absolutely, we did. Make sure that you select the layer that we're working with. And then we can complete some tasks. First, I think I'm going to move it just a little bit. So I can click on the Move tool. As long as I'm on that layer, I can click on the Move tool, and I can move this into a position where I think it might want to live. If I'm putting it on the back wall there, maybe it's something somewhere into that area. I'm going to make some more adjustments to this. I obviously have to play with scale because this is way too large. If you photographed with a little scale figure in your space, that's always awesome and helpful. That gives you an idea of the human height in this area and can help you in your composition of these photo montages. So I'm going to leave that there for a moment. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll bring it down in here. All right. So maybe move is not where I want to start, but it may be where you want to start. I'm still in that move command. I'm still having this layer selected. I think I'm going to scale this first. I think that might be easier to demonstrate this. And so how do I do that? We did that with the background image, right? So with that layer selected, edit, transform, scale. I see these grips that are showing up around the object. I can grab one of the corner ones. I can grab any of them, and it starts to scale, right? Now I'm just holding down my left mouse button and moving things up and down. And you can see the height of the total image changing as I move things. I could do the same thing, grabbing from a side grip. It's going to scale proportionately when I do this. If I want it for some reason to not scale proportionately as you're holding down your left click mouse, you could also hold down Shift to scale it not proportionally. I don't recommend that because what are we doing? We're modifying pixels an awful lot. So here I'm holding Shift and then moving in the scale. Look how I can distort and transform this. This is me holding down Shift at the same time. I don't know that I recommend that, but it might be something you play with. Remember, you can always Control Z to undo something. Control Z to undo. So if I accidentally did that, it's like, oh, that's not what I wanted. Control Z to move us back into the original here. I'm not holding Shift now. When I have the scale command clicked, I can just grab and toggle a corner and move that up and down to scale that. The nice thing about this as well is when you're in the middle of this command, you can actually move it around in your screen. So it's a transform tool that allows you to, while scale is going, to change the scale of this, but I can also click somewhere else because I have the layer selected. I can click somewhere else in that image and move things and position things in some interesting ways, right? So maybe something like that, approximately in that position. When I'm satisfied with that, I can click enter to end that transformation. Sweet. We're placing our construct into context. Look how important we talked about before, right? How you set up your photograph of your construct. If this was the background image, knowing that this was where you wanted to place this construct. Again, the importance of noticing and seeing with your designer eyes the underside of this roof plane here, right? And that matches to the underside of this, right? This photograph, again, taken, this background photograph, again, taken from the human perspective. Lauren Deek was out on site and shot this. And so the height of this photograph that was taken is from the human perspective, from the human height approximately. And so shrinking yourself down, right? I always tell my students, shrink yourself down into your model when you photograph it. Get a photograph from the perspective of a human in that space, occupying that space. So yeah, this is looking great. We have a transformed image, a scaled image, and then we've moved that image to an approximate location. Starting to look good. This is great. Actually, and this is where I'll end this tutorial. There are some other effects that you can use to change the background. I always like to lighten up the background because I like the focus of the image to shine, right? Some hierarchy there. If I select this image here, we do have some adjustments we can play with. These adjustment settings, you might check those out if you wanted to. one of my defaults is always going to hue and saturation, which is this left icon here. With this layer selected, I can click on hue and saturation, and it's creating essentially another layer modification, if you will, layer above that. And I can go to saturation. I can play with those sliders to desaturate the background. There it is, completely in a grayscale. If I take saturation all the way down to -100, let's see what -50 looks like. That's okay. Again, compared to, here's our hue and saturation. I did that. I clicked on this, on the layer I wanted to change, and then I clicked on an adjustment up in this area here. That adjustment layer pops up and is only affecting things below it, right? Think about layer management and the layers here. This is above the rest of these, and so that adjustment is applying to the rest of this. But if I turn that visibility on and off, look at the difference between our original base photo there, and the red of the brick really shows up, that red-orange color. And if I turn it on, we kind of mute that color a little bit, allowing for our construct to stand out. Pretty sweet. And again, that's where I said I would end this one here. We'll come back with another one to add some people to this image, some entourage. So hopefully this was awesome, and hopefully you're going to do some awesome work playing with these tools as well. Thanks, guys.